So we do a lot of 5 lists. And they're
It's our
not...
favorite number.
Absolutely. Right after, other numbers. That doesn't make any sense. Can you restart?
Yeah.
So we do a lot of top 5 lists, but we don't always rank them.
No, we don't.
We're going to try something a little different today. We are going to be ranking our favorite villains from the Arkham franchise other than the Joker.
Of course.
Because I feel like the Joker, in terms of who is written the best, which is what we are trying to look at, who is written the best, who do we like the best as a villain, the Joker would obviously be number 1 in terms of how he's written. Yeah.
For a sense of just even competitiveness, I guess. We wanted to get rid of the Joker because all 4 games focus on the Joker.
Yeah, it's one big character arc, just like Batman.
That's it. So we're focusing on the other guys that didn't get as much love as main man, Mr. J.
Oh, and some of these ladies, they deserve more love.
You.
So,
I'm reporting you to HR.
Let's look first at Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is interesting in these games. She goes back and forth from being very well written to very surface level, I think, depending on the game. In Origins, where we see her first, I think that really humanizes the character, makes her interesting, shows how she sort of falls for the Joker, and falls into this world that she's not necessarily prepared for. But as we move on, she starts to become a little more reliable on the Joker, a little more reliant on the Joker as a character and in terms of writing, and her story arc starts to revolve mainly only around him, which is a little bit of a problem. That's why she's not higher on the list. But I do think she's very relatable, very interesting.
Yeah, we think that she's amazing, and she's voice acted very well, by the way. It starts with Arlene Sorkin from the animated
very
series.
Good job.
And then goes to Tara Strong.
Also very
and
good
she's
job.
Brilliant as well. And with Harley Quinn, the reason she's not higher on the list for us, I feel like, is there's just not as much depth there, really, as some of the other characters that we see on the list. Because we see, with Harley Quinn, there's depth in that, like, with Joker dying in Arkham City. Like, that obviously changes the character. We slowly see her, like you said, become more reliant on Joker. And even in Asylum, when she gets taken down and, like, is left in the cell, Joker doesn't come get her. But that doesn't affect their relationship at all. That's just what Harley's used to. So we see, like, fun things like that where she's reliant on Joker and would never, like, abandon that relationship. And we see that, like, how that affects her later in Night. We see that development there. So
and yet they don't focus on her enough in Night.
They don't.
That's something we talked about, too, is, like, she should have been one of the main villains. And instead they kind of just push her to the back burner in a lot of ways. Like, she shows up a little bit, gets captured, and then she's just done. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
No, and even in Harley Quinn's Revenge too, like it's a fine DLC, and
it's fun,
and I had a good time with it, but it doesn't really go. It's not amazing, I guess.
No, it's not even in depth emotionally about her. It's just like, oh, she's pissed, Joker's gone. That's kind of it. They didn't really go in depth on like her emotional state or like what makes her tick as a character. There's no deconstruction of her character really at all.
No, you only see something at the very end with with the cutscene at the end where she's like, now you know how I feel when Batman thinks that Robin had died, so that's really all that you get. And this isn't to say that like it feels like we're almost going on negatives with her. She's amazing.
Yeah, she is.
Season. She's in our top 5.
This is just why she's not up at like something like number 1.
Right.
Because I think we have to reason these out too.
For sure.
The next one we have is Scarecrow, coming in at number 4 out of 5. Scarecrow is done well. Some people really didn't like him in Night, actually. But I thought he was written well. I think the problem with his character is that he takes a bit of a back burner to other things going on in the game with Joker and with the Arkham Knight himself. But in terms of like his motivations, he's very interesting.
Well, it's kind of a sore spot, I feel like, too, with Arkham Knight, because it's not the same. It's to a much lesser extent. But there was still a feeling of like what happened in Origins where it was, hey look, Black Mask and all these other people are going to be the big name villains of this game. Where in Night it was marketed Scarecrow was looking like the big one in tandem with the Arkham Knight.
Yep. Which
is kind of the case, but it gets overshadowed by the Joker still.
It's kind of the case for like 3/4 of the game. And then like you said, it just Joker kind of comes in and bulldozes them both out of the way.
Quickly, because even right away, like when you get into Ace Chemicals, Joker shows up, and that's immediately when you see him just popping up frequently. And so, Scarecrow's amazing in that game. He's got a lot of really good lines, I feel like. But if they would have just focused on him
and just let that fear.
And just let that fully get fleshed out, I think it would have been a little bit better and we would have seen more of him, because I mean there was that great Easter egg that we saw in City with
a few of them actually.
Yeah,
we have the mask, and then like you said, the boat.
The boat there. I mean, even in and then you go back to Asylum. There was the fun boss fights that you saw in there too, where you're in Scarecrow's world. So there's a lot of really, really great things about Scarecrow. It would have just been cool to see the ending, I guess, with Night be more focused on him and let them dive deeper with him too.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out real quick too that Scarecrow does have a character arc in that way. In Asylum, he sort of sees Batman as fear. Batman is the Night. He is fear. So what is fear afraid of is what he's trying to get to. Batman overcomes it, and that really freaks out Scarecrow. Then you move on to City. He's a threat out there, but you don't see him. You know he's looming, you know he's coming back at some point, whether it's the next game or in Batman's future, and that is foreboding. And then in Night, it's sort of him enacting like his true form of who he is. You see his face as he has now created it. You see like what he wants to do to the city and to Batman to remove hope, to sort of replace hope with fear in the hearts of people and figure out what makes that tick and break Batman down as a man. And that makes him so interesting. But he's undermined by that Joker storyline in a lot of ways, in the sense of Batman could have beaten Scarecrow within the first couple hours multiple times. At Ace Chemicals, he totally has Scarecrow cornered, could have beaten him easily if not for the Joker hallucinations. It happens again on Stag's airship. He had him. And this happens multiple times. And in a way, it sort of makes Scarecrow look like a lackey, like he's an idiot at times. Like, he didn't have a plan for getting out of that. It's just that the Joker hallucinations let him slip out by luck.
Right.
And that makes him look dumb, which is one reason why he's not up there higher, despite being written well. It's just writing choices that Rocksteady made with him.
Definitely, and there were still some great writing choices with him,
yeah.
like the Easter egg to it, Asylum, where you see him. There's the three other people that are doing it, but you see Scarecrow's hand come up out of the water and grab the venom, and that's kind of like what you said. He was a looming threat because you see him grab that venom at the end of Asylum. You see the references in City, and then it culminates in Night. And like you said, it would have been cool if they would have made him not feel as much like a lackey, like you said, where he could have been stopped really if it wasn't for those Joker.
If it weren't for those scenes, I feel like it would be even better.
Yeah, because I mean he takes him and the Night take Barbara Gordon. They still are doing things that are very impactful and are like actually, causing danger for Batman and for the people around him. But Joker's there still, and it's just he takes over the whole game, so it's hard to avoid that.
So the next one we have actually is Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy is very interesting. I think she's done well in all the games. She has a relatable character arc that makes sense, as far as like she's not evil for the sake of being evil. She thinks she's doing what's right. A lot of the best villains in fiction are written that way. Like if you just have a villain where it's like Snively Whiplash, like, oh, I'm evil because I'm evil.
Right.
It's very hard to make that character interesting.
Look at Thanos, for example.
Yeah.
Just recently from the MCU. Not to get off on like a
No,
Marvel tangent,
you're right. He's like very relatable.
He thinks what he's doing is right by wiping out half the universe, and
Yeah, and that's kind of what you need with a character like that. And Poison Ivy does come across that way in every game. And for her to have this final redemptive arc for the greater good at the end of Night, some people say it makes no sense, it comes out of left field. But the thing with her character is that she always felt like she was on the side of the greater good. It's that she felt humans weren't. And so for her, yes, she is by proxy saving humans and doing the right thing, but it's more about the plants. It's more about doing what's right and what she feels is right than about the reason Batman does it, right? And so that's kind of my thing with her, is that you always understand her reasoning throughout the games, which I think makes her written well. She's also an interesting take on the sultry, seductress type character, where like she uses her feminine wiles to sort of manipulate people around her, both in terms of her physical body but also in terms of her powers, and that sort of makes her very interesting. She's a bit, I know Gotham City sirens is a thing, but she is a little bit like a siren, like this dangerous threat, but like there's something about her that characters gravitate towards, and that makes her very iconic and interesting as well, I think.
I would agree 100%. She takes, like, especially when you start off in the beginning with Asylum, move into City and Night, she has given the boss fights in Asylum aren't great, she's got kind of a fun one. It's more of a memorable one, I guess, in Asylum. In City, there's some fun chemistry going on with Catwoman there that you get to see that is really only explored in City. So you get to see that, which was fun. And then in Night, it's like you said, that redemption story is where it all comes back. And so, I mean, I think they really did a nice job, and I don't really have too much to add to what you said, because I think you pretty much touched on everything, which is great. So
no, the next ones we're going to go through a little quickly, because we are trying to make it to another showing of the Joker, actually.
Yes, yeah.
But we have Mr. Freeze coming in at number 2. I think he is very well written. He is a human being. He doesn't ever come across as evil to me. He comes across as someone who is doing bad things for what he perceives is the greater good again, for his wife Nora. He really cares so much about her, and it's pretty tragic. He sort of turned himself into this not human thing in order to save the one thing that he cares about. In a way, his character arc does match Batman's a little bit. Batman has to become something that maybe necessarily he wouldn't want to be in order to do what he thinks is right. And Mr. Freeze is doing the same thing, it's just he's doing a lot of bad stuff to get there.
Oh, agreed. And I honestly, for me, looking at like the gameplay aspects of him as well, his boss fight in City is one of my favorites in the entire...
It's one of the best in the entire series.
It's fantastic. Amazing. So that's a highlight by itself. But also, I mean, you find him, just his City arc was fantastic. And then the way that they close it out with Season of Infamy as well.
Oh my gosh, it was so good.
It was really good, and it was actually like emotional. It was a tough thing to watch, and it was something that was building up throughout the entirety from City up until that point, because, you know, even in City, when you're looking for Nora and you find her, and then you see, which was cool, after you find her, you see that he like created a path to walk over the river to get to that place to get Nora back. So it changed the world too. So I mean, just gameplay wise too, he did a lot of really cool things and had some really good boss fights, but also was well written and had an ending that was emotional and well done and just felt like a conclusion, you know?
Yeah, I really wish that there were certain things that didn't undermine him just a tiny bit in terms of gameplay, as far as like in Night. Like, I think that his storyline at the end of Season of Infamy didn't connect with everybody because they were so annoyed with the tank battle.
Yeah.
Like going into it, but I don't think that affects the writing of the character.
No, I would agree.
I think if you look at it just from the writing of the character, he is done phenomenally well. You just have to look past a couple of game design choices in that one to get there, which I understand is hard.
Right.
The final one we have actually for the best villain we think in the series, the best written villain we think in the series, it might be a little debated.
Aside from Joker,
yes, is Hugo Strange. Now, he's only in really one game in terms of mattering. He's mentioned in other things. Sure, he has a bio in Asylum that's clearly not canon now because he really seemed to just go evil after that.
Yes.
But he is sort of a looming threat in the sense of you can see that Arkham City was already being planned in Asylum. You have to go through that wall. I believe it's in Quincy Sharp's office.
Yeah.
And it was a hidden Easter egg for a long time. But you can see that there were already plans to create Arkham City. So even back then, Hugo Strange was sort of scheming to do this. But after that, once you get to City, that's the meat of his storyline. And he really wants to become Batman in a lot of ways. He wants to be Bruce's successor. He wants to take over for Ra's al Ghul. He wants to do what Batman can't. Batman is a half measure. He refuses to kill. And Hugo Strange recognizes two things. I mean, like, he's a bad person and he's corrupt and he pulls in people that have nothing to do with it. And that's one thing, obviously, is he's not good. But he also recognizes that Batman's refusal to kill allows monsters like the Joker to just exist and run rampant. And so it's like, he's a villain who doesn't think he's evil, but he also has some solid points. And you get him. And he breaks Batman down to a man, especially in Crime Alley.
Yeah, that was a really impactful scene in Crime Alley, too, where he's just voicing over that as you kneel down over the chalk outlines of your parents. And I mean, he is such a looming presence in City, and it even connects back into Asylum, like you said, in how he's super interested in that he uses Ra's al Ghul's resources to essentially do whatever he wants. And he takes that, and you even hear interactions with inmates of City where it's like they were talking about the electroshock therapy that was going on, you know, in the asylum, and just the crazy things that were going on that were conducted by Hugo Strange. And so he's a person that has an impact in in Asylum and in a connected storyline that way, but also is responsible for getting Quincy Sharp elected as mayor and is helping getting that stuff. So he's kind of like a looming background presence.
And a puppet master in a lot of ways. Yeah, he's got things going for him in the games that are very interesting, that tie into his character arc.
With leverage too, because he knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman. So that's something that's looming over as well. And he doesn't share it ever. He just uses it as leverage. And I think he was one of the best written characters in the game, in the franchise, and I really loved his presence in City. So.
Absolutely, me too. So hey, I'm sure that some of you will have different lists than us. Let us know what you think your top 5 Arkham franchise villains are other than Joker. We're definitely interested to hear that. Let us know what other things you'd like to see from the channel, whether it's rankings or top 5s from Batman, but we're also looking at branching out and doing some with other series and other games. So let us know what you'd like to see, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a fantastic day.